Hello everybody, nice to see you back at my desk. Every aircraft has a story, and today we are building one of the most iconic eyes in the sky. We're talking on a true legend, the E-2C Hawkeye. A challenging build, features a unique silhouette and holds a lot of detail we need to uncover. This is a limited edition released by Eduard, which is in fact a repack of the classic Heller kit at 1/72 scale. Eduard adds to the Heller plastic some photo etched parts, resin landing gears, and decals. So let's dive in. Starting with the cockpit, and very quickly I realized that the aftermarket improvements Eduard included in the box are quite limited. The main cockpit panels are simple water slide decals, but even more disappointing was the fact that the seat belts were just decals too. So Eduard did release some additional seat sets you have to buy separately, like these 3D decals with photo etched seat belts. Honestly, I don't know how much of this will be visible once everything is closed up, but I like adding details like this to make the model more realistic, just for my own satisfaction. So first I need to remove all molded in details from the cockpit parts. Next I painted the entire interior in dark gray following the manual. However, the 3D interior panels and the detailed reference pictures shows that the sides of the cockpit should be much lighter color, perhaps light gray or even white. The C338 light gray seems close, so I need to repaint the side panels with the lighter tone. I will close the interior cockpit door so that the empty rear compartment won't be visible. I leave a dark gal gray on the floor, but from the photos I notice a black anti-slip surface around the pedal, so I paint that in the rubber black. With the interior painting finished, we can move on to the 3D decals. Most of these will be placed on some slightly curved plastic, so I better to use a touch of glue to make sure they will stay in place. Although Eduard's 3D decals should stick well on a flat surface like a water slide decal, the uneven surface here needs a bit of extra help. Adding more details to the interior, the window framing is black. And now I can finish and install the instrumental panel. The pilot seats in the kit are very basic, and the only improvement will be to use the photo etch set seat belts. After painting the main body black, I'm using Vallejo acrylics for the seating cushion. I found many different colors in the reference, so I'm going with the olive brown. The body of the seat needs to be given a used, worn look by dry brushing heavily with steel color. And now it's time for the seat belts. They definitely look much better than the decals. Next, I will add a little bit more depth to the back panel. There would certainly be some cabling on the real plane, so I'm adding some custom wires just for a bit of fun. Before finishing, the cockpit needs to be weathered. I've seen pictures where the interior was quite used, so I'm adding scratches and stains to the floor and panels. And here it is. Next I will prepare these side door instrumental panels, highlighting the details with a fine brush and Vallejo acrylics. And there goes the water slide decal on the side wall. As the next step, I am preparing the engine nacelles and the wheelbase. All the landing gear legs need to be glued in before closing the nacelles and the fuselage hulls, which is a little impractical, especially when it comes to masking them later for painting, but we'll get to that soon.
No, akože to je blbé, lebo nechcú, ja som to nechcela rozoberať pre ostatní, ale tak čo máme robiť my? Tak tam je 28 detí, ako chcú...
The wheelbase suffer from poor quality molding. There are strong ping marks that need to be sanded in some very awkward and inaccessible places. This caused a bit of a headache and I needed to repeat the sanding more than I would have liked before the final paint. Finally, I can start completing the engine nacelles, adding some photo-etched grills into the intakes. And placing the main wheel legs. After gluing all parts together, there were visible seams in the intakes and exhausts that needed to be cleaned up. Dealing with these small curved parts was quite a challenge. Let's prepare the main components. First, the central wing section. Then the tail and the vertical stabilizers. And now I can install the cockpit and the front wheel bay. And next comes the most tricky part of the build, balancing the plane. I want to display the Hawkeye with its wings folded, which needless to say will be a big challenge for the balance. For the ballast I'm using the fishing lead weight of different sizes to fit into the small space in the nose. More ballast come behind the cockpit, but this is already close to the center of gravity, so I need to add more heavier weights. This ballast is also secured with a super glue, and I'm using the activator to make the bond even tighter. Anyway, adding the lead to the Hawkeye brings it to another level of realism, as the plane is structurally reinforced to protect the crew from radar emissions. Now I can glue the fuselage hulls together. The fit is not great. So it needs some attention. I will fill all the gaps with putty. I was doing this putting late at night so it could dry well till my next session, and I was a little generous with the amount of putty. But here's a small trick: you can wipe away the extra putty with levering thinner once dried, leaving the filler only in the gaps. That doesn't eliminate the need for sanding the joints, but definitely results in much less dust. Something my wife will definitely appreciate. So now the sanding, this time using a sanding sponge with the water to clean the seams and misalignments. After the sanding, I need to restore any damaged panel lines. And now I can put all the main parts together. Before I permanently glue the central part of the wings, I am doing a dry fit test for the balance. Basically, I'm putting all the parts together without the glue to make sure that the plane stands correctly. And if it didn't, I could still add more ballast. But luckily it wasn't needed in my case, so I can glue the central part of the wings. Finishing the navigation light section, I saw some pictures showing this part was yellow, so I will paint it yellow. It will be an eye-catching detail at least. And now comes the masking. First on the canopy using Eduard's pre-cut mask from the box. And then I need to mask the wheelbase and the main gear legs carefully. Since the kit required a lot of sanding, thoroughly cleaning the model before paint is absolutely necessary. I start with a layer of Mr. Surfacer Grey Primer. Then comes one of my favorite steps, pre-shading to simulate fading and wear. The main paint begins with the black leading edges of the wings and tails. Easy to be painted, but challenging to cover. And finally, we can paint the main body with light ghoul gray using Mr. Paints as always for the main color. The paint is well diluted, which gives you a great control over how much you want to expose the pre-shade, and half of the weathering is already done. The next step in the painting process is to paint this anti-reflection black on the nose. They even provided a decal for this, but I prefer to paint it to match the shade of the nose tip, which I need to paint black anyway. And they didn't provide any decals, and this part is definitely more complicated for painting and masking. Some words about global operators and the history. The E-2C Hawkeye has served with more countries than people usually expect. Beyond the US Navy, operators have included Japan, France, Egypt, Taiwan, Singapore, Mexico, and even Israel, one of the earliest foreign users. Israel flew its Hawkeys through 1980s and later sold several airframes to Mexico, where they continued operating for years. France is the only nation besides the United States to fly the Hawkeye from the aircraft carrier, the Charles de Gaulle, while Japan remains the biggest international user, deploying the aircraft to monitor vast Pacific airspace. First flown in early 1960s, the Hawkeye has enjoyed one of the longest operational careers in the naval aviation, supporting missions in conflicts from Vietnam to Desert Storm, Afghanistan, and countless maritime patrols, all the way to present-day operations around the world. The latest E-2D advanced Hawkeye, with its powerful new radar and upgraded systems, ensure that the type will stay in service well into 2040s and likely beyond, extending a lineage that began more than 60 years ago. Although I'll display the plane with folded wings, you can still have extended flaps in that configuration, so I'll paint them deployed. And a touch of red makes the aircraft more visually interesting. This next step is very important for the decals. I will seal the paint with a glossy varnish. Let's move on to the decaling. I will go for the beer S's marking with that striking red on paint. These are Eduard decals, which sometimes raise controversy among the community due to the protective film. But first thing first, we have already a glossy surface. For the decals I used Mr. Mark Setter and then several layers of Mark Softer. You can use other products too. Honestly, I still like microscale solutions more, so I even touch the decals with the microsol at the end. Small technological insights. At its core, the E-2C Hawkeye is an airborne early warning and command and control aircraft, essentially a miniature of AWACS built for the carrier decks. Its massive rotating radar dome provides a full 360-degree picture capable of tracking hundreds of targets and monitoring airspace of out of hundreds of kilometers. A single Hawkeye can oversee airspace roughly the size of France, and inside the cooling system work overtime to manage the heat from its powerful radar. With just a 5-person crew, 2 pilots and 3 mission operators, the aircraft performs air traffic control, battle management, threat detection and coordination between fighters, ships, helicopters, drones and surveillance assets. One E-2C can tie together an entire strike group, acting as a communication hub and a technical nerve center long before enemy threats ever appear on a shipboard radar. By the way, Eduard has actually updated the manual for this kit on their website, and it's worth grabbing it. In the original inbox instructions, the C and D markings options were basically swapped, even down to the squadron being mismatched with the decal guides. That created quite a bit of confusion, especially around those small details like antennas, propeller, and rudder dome cap. So if you're starting with this kit, save yourself detective work and download the updated manual first. I think I managed to catch most of the mistakes thanks to the reference photos, and no, I'm absolutely not going back now to check. My sanity needs a break. It's very important to let the decal sit untouched for at least 24 hours. With about 3 tons of technical stencils on this aircraft, the waiting time was easy. In fact, I was applying decals for 3 evenings. And now the traditional question for all Eduard's decals: to peel or not to peel? I mean the protective film, of course. It's quite easy, using just a flat brush and a little bit of water. And here is the comparison of a peeled and an unpeeled roundel. To peel is the answer. But when it comes to all the tiny stencils, I decided to stay with not peeling. Since I was already working on the decals for so long, I simply don't have the patience to peel the film from all the micro stencils for another 3-4 days. I only peel the main larger decals. And with the decaling finished, I can cover the plane with one more layer of gloss varnish. And here I found a mistake which I did during the painting. The leading edges on the central part of the wings should not be black. I'm sure I saw a picture of the plane with the black ones, but reference photos I saw later with the beer ace bird have it in the main camouflage color. The fix was easy, but I think the black looked better anyway. Maybe US Navy could take this as inspiration. Before weathering, I applied a coat of satin varnish, which is preferred for me as a final finish on the modern planes. I checked a lot of reference photos of Hawkeys, and overall the US Navy aircrafts tend to be kept quite clean and well maintained. Most of the subtle fading and wear is already baked in the pre-shading and careful painting layers, so I'll keep the weathering light on this one. Started with the wheelbase and the panel liner, then I'll move on the body, highlighting the panel lines with a diluted sepia oil wash. This bird is an icon. I have a couple of more interesting facts. Carrier operations are where the Hawkey's unique design becomes obvious. The aircraft is powered by two T56 turboprop engines, not particularly fast but extremely reliable, perfect for long overwater missions. The oversized tail surface helps stabilize the airframe when crosswind catches the dome, and the offset nose gears make the room for the rudder wiring on the opposite side. Despite its size, the Hawkeye often uses only around 60-70% of the catapult power thanks to its huge, efficient wings. The aircraft's deep droning sound even earned its nickname, the Hammer. On US carriers, the Hawkeye typically launches before the fighters, setting up the tactical picture long before other aircraft check in. Landing on a carrier is a challenge of its own. The large rudder dome creates drag and side forces, making crosswind recoveries particularly demanding on the pilot. After that, I picked out the rivets on the black leading edges using a light gray, just to make them pop out a bit. Next comes the dirt on the wing walkways and around the body, and some attention on the joints between the wings, tail surfaces and fuselage. Recently I've been preferring cleaner builds. Maybe I've outgrown the urge of overweathering everything, or maybe this aircraft just looks so good that it doesn't mean much, so only a few small touches this time. Let me know in the comments how much you would weather this, or how much did you like to see on your models. This aircraft uses the massive 8-blade Sandstrand propeller, so let's get those painted. Those 8-blade props aren't just distinctive, they reduce vibration and improve efficiency during long missions. And here where the things get fun. According to the instructions, each of the 8 blades should have the Sandstrand label, but Eduard only included 8 decals for 2 props, which is half of what I need. And for optional Hamilton propeller, they gave 4 decals for 8 blades. Someone in Eduard definitely needs to redo their math homework. I'll place the labels on every second blade, but yeah, it hurts. Time to bring this bird to life. First, I'll finish a few details on the doors. Then onto the landing gear, a bit of weathering. Red edges on the covers and everything can be mounted in place. Next up, the unusual chapter, the wings. I'll check out the folding mechanism. I'll pick out some details with dry brushing and a bit of a panel liner. Overall, it stays mostly white. This folding system on the Hawkeye is a masterpiece. Unlike most aircraft where the wings just fold up, the Hawkeye's wings need an extra rotation toward the tail to avoid the massive rudder dome, and because they are huge. The aircraft has almost 25 meters wingspan, nearly double that of a Super Hornet. There's no way you could move it around the carrier deck with the wings unfolded. And now the last few steps. First, the arresting hook. The radome, I leave it unglued so I can rotate the turntable whenever I want, and let's put it away for a while. Unmasking the canopy and the windows. And don't forget the windshield wipers. I'm adding these from the photo etch set included in the box. And with that, we've reached the end of this build. Thank you all very much for watching. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss any of my future projects. And here it is, ready to stand, watch over the carrier and also over my display. The eye of the fleet, the E-2C Hawkeye.